Wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. When Allah created the universe, and when he created all of the species within the universe that live on this planet Earth, lastly, he created man. And when he created man with all of the other species that he created within man. So man is an amalgam of everything that there is. Within man is everything, from the lowest to the highest. Man contains it all. Now, what is it that comes out of man? Who is it that man becomes? How is it that man ventures into this world, and how does he act? Well, it begins with the influence on each of us from our environment when we're little, from our parents, from our teachers, from our schooling, from our contemporaries, from our peers. They all bring to us certain ideas, certain cultural norms, certain ways of being. They tell us what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and we become formed into a walking, talking entity that has a whole catalog of ways that we express ourselves and ways that we believe are appropriate to act within this world. And within us, there are many that we have never, many kinds of ways of being that we've never gotten in touch with, that we don't know, that are still available to us, both in the spectrum of khair and shar, which means good and bad. Khair being bad, shar being good. As we move through life, we run into different influences. And we are either open to those influences or closed to those influences, depending upon our point of view and the level degree of our own arrogance and our own belief system as to how much we already know and if we need anything. When I was about 22, I was living in Boston and I was attending law school. In October of my first year of law school, I got a letter and it said, "Dear so-and-so, you can go and finish your first year of law school, but after that, you have to come and enter into the Army. In other words, you're drafted." And this was in 1968. And for those of you who are close to as old as I am, you'll remember that that was the time of the Vietnamese War. And I said to myself, here I am. I could be dead within a year. what am I doing going to law school? And how is this important to me and my life? And I concluded that it wasn't very important. So I essentially stopped going to classes. And to try and find something that was important in my life, I began to visit esoteric bookstores and began to read about the nature of existence, the nature of reality, and the purpose of existence. And I went through lots of different ways. I read about Buddhism. I read about Hinduism. I read about Gurdjieff. And then I came upon some books about Sufism. At that time, the predominant author who had written things about Sufism was someone called Idris Shah. And Idris Shah had a few books out. And I read some of those books, and I was very taken by a story that was the introduction to one of his books, which I'll tell you in a short version. People were living on an island, and the ruler of the island was a dictator, a despot, and life was very hard. And there was no way to escape from the island. There were no boats. Boats were forbidden. As a matter of fact, the word boat was taken out of the dictionary. So there was no way to get away. But there were rumors that there were teachers who could show you how to escape. And you might be able to find one of these if you were very diligent. And so the story went that if you found one, these men could teach you how to swim. And if you learned how to swim, you would be able to escape from the island. The problem was that when most people ran into one of these teachers and were told how to swim, the first question they had is, well, can I take my furniture with me? And can I take my cabbages with me? And can I take my food supply with me? And the teachers would respond, you can't take anything with you if you want to learn how to swim. You can't swim and carry all of these things simultaneously. So the answer from most people who were looking for the teacher after they found him was, well, in that case, I guess I can't go any further. And that was my beginning of understanding something about the way. You can't go on the way unless you give things up that you're attached to in this world. You have to find a way without these things. I then also read that when you're ready, a teacher will come along in your life. And in March of 1972, after I had graduated law school, taken the bar, and passed it, that's what happened. A teacher came into my life. And I remember the first couple of times I was with him, all of a sudden, everything seemed incredibly somber to me. And here I was, I found a teacher. He was telling me things that were beyond my imagination. And everything became a little heavy. And so the first question I asked him was, when you go on this path, do you lose your sense of humor? And he looked at me and he goes, I don't know. I'm looking at what you're doing and everything seems very funny to me. And that's when I realized that a change has got to come and I have to be able to see things in a new way. And I began to study with him. And one of the first things he told me, it might have been right at that same moment, was stop reading books. You have me now. You don't need books anymore. Well, I did. I stopped reading books and I started seeing him and listening to him. And it opened up for me a new way of interpreting this world, a new way of seeing this world, and a new way of understanding what I was involved in, being a human thrust into this existence. All of us are in this same dilemma. We are all, male or female, humans thrust into this dilemma of living in this world and trying to make our way through it and understand what's going on. And Bawa, my teacher, was constantly explaining the nature of existence and the nature of our place in existence and our relationship to this existence and what it in fact meant. And I began to understand that in truth, existence is not what it appears to be. We have certain senses, and these senses interact with this elemental world we live in. And for most of us, this interaction of our senses and the elemental world is our life. But I learned that there are other ways to see, and there are other ways to experience, and that there is more to know than what your senses can experience. And it was explained that we have within us all that Allah created, all that God created. And we can find within us modes and ways of expression, depending on what our intention is. Now, how is our intention formed? What forms our idea of what it is that we want? What forms our notions of what we want to accomplish? Well, a lot of this has to do with what we understand is important to us. If we come from an education that is entirely focused on the material world, then what becomes important to us is the material world. And we set various intentions within the material world. For instance, we set educational goals, and we set title goals, and we set acquisition goals, and we set power goals for ourselves. And we strive to accomplish these things. Each of us has within us inherent wisdom, inherent reasoning. Now, dependent upon our intention of what we are trying to accomplish, our inherent wisdom finds a way to interact with our intention to move that intention forward. Now, we have more than one kind of inherent wisdom. We have wisdom that will interact with the material world. We have wisdom that will interact with the animal world. We have wisdom that can take us higher than these worlds. So, if we have an intention to push people around, to be powerful, we will arouse within ourselves a wisdom that falls in line with that intention. So we'll come up with the wisdom of a bull, and we'll live with bull wisdom. If we're not physically powerful, and we find that the way to get things accomplished is by being devious and by hiding and doing things in surreptitious ways, we may develop fox wisdom. Fox wisdom will come out of us in order to facilitate our devious intention. Now, there may come a time in our life when we leave this interaction or this need for interaction with the physical world, and we understand that there is more to existence than our sense interaction with the elements, that there's more to things than touching, feeling, hearing, smelling, seeing, etc. That the desires that we fulfill through the sense attractions that we have, there's something more than that. And we have inherent within us a wisdom that will take us to those different qualities. When we begin to learn from a teacher about the transcendent nature that exists within this elemental world, that there is more than what meets the eye, that there's more than what we see, we need a wisdom, a reasoning that can take us to that place. And that reasoning comes about through the influence of someone who is in that higher place, who is able to convey to us the nature of that transcendent quality, the nature of what happens within those transcendent qualities. And inherently, we have wisdom that goes along with our intention to find these transcendent qualities. But first, to arouse that inherent wisdom within us, we have to set the intention for this transcendence. We have to set the intention for finding a way to become more than an interaction of sense and elemental forces. And this happens from being within the influence of a transcendent being, from being within the influence of a teacher who has gone beyond the elemental and now functions from a different place. Imagine running into somebody who doesn't function from greed, who doesn't function from love of elemental things, who doesn't function from need, who doesn't function from desire, who doesn't function from trying to obtain things or the need to have things, who functions on an entirely different plane. And imagine that you get to sit with that being and you get to feel and understand that nature of being. And what I saw was that when you are in a state of love, the needs that happen when you're not in a state of love, the needs that occur to try and give you satisfaction, to try and fulfill your desires, to try and fulfill your needs, dissipate. They somehow disappear. So I noticed that when you are in a state of love, many of the objectives that you carry when you're not in a state of love disappear. The objectives of needing more, the desire to fulfill lust, the desire to maintain or obtain power, the need for wealth, the need to lord over other people. When love enters the equation, all of these things disappear and dissipate. And even though you will have contact with people who still have these desire-based drives, you begin to see that these desire-based drives are actually diseases, not natural functionings of humanity. It is a humanity that has gone astray from the original intention of its creation. So we, each of us, individually, has to look at ourselves and try and figure out what it is that drives us, what it is that makes us function, and we have to look very closely at what it is that we want. What do we look to accomplish? What is our desire? And what is our desire in this world? If you had the opportunity to sit in front of a wise man, what would you ask him? What would the question that arises from your innermost self be? What would it pertain to? Well, there's a wide variety of questions that are asked, but for the most part, people are looking to find peace and satisfaction within their being. People are looking to be made whole, to find some repose in their life and come to a place of contentment and peace. Now, for many people, their imagination tells them that in order to find this peace, they have to have certain things. And without these things, peace isn't possible. So what happens is, instead of intending peace, people intend wealth. Instead of intending peace, people intend fame. Instead of intending peace, people intend material things that they think will bring them peace. So all kinds of intentions are set up which bring along with them a inherent wisdom that or reason that is within us to accomplish those things. So if we believe that in order to find peace, we need wealth, then we will have arisen within us that reasoning, that wisdom that chases money, that tries to accomplish becoming wealthy. And each of us has that kind of reasoning within us. The understanding that we have to come to, and the understanding that we have to have in order to get to that place of peace, is that there are no intermediaries. You will not find peace by obtaining things in the world. You will not find peace by gathering from all of the elemental resources in the world and bringing them towards you. Peace doesn't come that way. And unless you give up your attachment to those things, the requisite wisdom that will take you to peace won't come, because your intention isn't for peace. You may tell yourself that your intention is for peace, but in reality, your intention is for wealth, or your intention is for fame, or your intention is for power. But the assumption that we have that these things can bring peace to us is wrong. And if we move forward on that assumption, we are going to create pathways that will take us towards places where peace can't be found. Wealth comes with its own complications, its own dramas, and its own intricacies. Once you begin to accumulate things, you then have to protect them. And there's a myriad of things that has to be done in order to maintain them. Somehow, somewhere, we have to discover that peace is found through our relationship with our Lord. And peace is not found in other places. Salam, peace, is one of the names of Allah, and therefore one of the qualities of Allah. So peace is not found in the world. Peace is found with God. And if we are going to find peace, we have to find our way to God. And we have to set an intention to find our way to God. And then the requisite wisdom that is already inherent within us will come to match that intention. So as we leave the intention to accumulate wealth, or we leave the intention to accumulate fame, or we leave the intention to accumulate worldly possessions, if we relieve ourselves of those desires, the intention and the requisite wisdom can arise within us to transcend the elemental world and begin to understand what is beyond the elemental world. And in this way, we can begin to find truth. But to do it, we have to transcend all of our desire-based needs within the elemental world. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't have a job. This doesn't mean that you can't earn money. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a house. I remember when I was about 27 or 28, I asked Bawa if it was okay to buy a house. And he laughed at me. And he said, not only is it okay, you better hurry up because they're only going to get a lot more expensive, which is exactly what happened. The point is, we need to learn how to live in the world, yet not be of the world simultaneously. We have to look like we believe in the world in order to get along in the world, but in truth, we don't believe in the world, we believe in God. So we have to carry these understandings, and we have to carry these ways within us. We have to be here, yet not here at the same time. We have to have things, but not have them at the same time. We need things in order to move through this world, but we can't be attached to them. We need to change our attachments from the world to Allah. And we have to understand what that means. And at the core of that understanding is that none of these things that we are attached to in this world truly exist. The only thing that truly exists is that which is eternal. And all of the things that we are attached to within this world are temporary and have spans of existence, including this body, including our own being. So if we are attached to the world, if we are attached to all of these elemental treasures within this world, in the same way, we are attached to our own being and to the subsistence of our own being. And just as the treasures in this elemental world disappear, this being that we treasure is like the other elements, also elemental, and it will also disappear. So we need to attach ourselves to something that isn't going to disappear, something that doesn't have a limited time span, something that doesn't come into existence and then fade from existence, something that is eternal. And what is it that's eternal? Our Lord is eternal, and we need to attach ourselves to our Lord. And the methodology for attaching ourselves to our Lord is to enter into transcendent qualities. And what does that mean, transcendent qualities? It means qualities that are higher than the elemental qualities, qualities that are spiritual in nature as opposed to elemental in nature, qualities that have no form, yet truly exist. And even though we can't see these things, we know they are, and we know they exist, and we know we can believe in them. And what are these qualities? What are these things? Well, it's not hard to imagine them. As a matter of fact, many of them are listed in a little book called the Asmaul Husna, which is the names of God. So Rahman and Rahim, mercy and compassion, are some of these transcendent qualities. Love and kindness are these transcendent qualities. And what is the essence of love and kindness? It's giving beyond yourself, giving on behalf of someone else without an inherent selfishness that I need first. I have to take care of me first. Somehow the me is removed and the other becomes important. Something like what God does with us. God is constantly giving to us. He created us, He maintains us, and He sustains us. Can we do some of God's work in the world? Can we help and assist others in the world? Can we love others in the world? Can we be compassionate in the world? Or is the center of our attention our egocentric self and its needs? As we give up our egocentric self and its needs, our intentions change. As our intentions change, the requisite wisdom that goes along with those intentions will arise from within us because we already have it within us. What we need is the appropriate attitude, the appropriate idea, the appropriate connection to that which is transcendent. And then we begin to have transcendent wisdom as opposed to worldly reasoning and what we'll call worldly wisdom. The intellect is worldly wisdom. Transcendent wisdom is when divine understanding comes into our being and reacts towards the rest of the world with an intention that brings forth God's qualities, with an intention that brings forth compassion, with an intention that brings forth mercy, with an intention that brings forth truth and justice. So if we can change our intention, the requisite wisdom to make that intention grow will rise within us because it's all there already. Don't doubt that it can come to you. Just believe in your new intention. Form an intention for kindness. Form an intention for love. Leave behind all of the old ways of continuing to make the self larger and bigger and more important. Stop worrying about the self. God will take care of us. What we need to do is take care that we are moving towards Him and setting up that pathway of moving towards Him. We have to stop carrying that which we used to think was important. Two monks were walking to another city, and to get there, they had to cross a river. And there was a woman who was at the side of the river, and she was frightened because she was also needing to cross the river, but was afraid. One of the monks took her, put her on his back, and crossed the river and let her go. And she went on, and they each went on their way. The other monk, who understood that monks weren't supposed to have interaction with women, was very concerned about what his fellow monk had done. And he thought about it and thought about it. And that night, when he went to sleep, he was still thinking about it. The next morning, he woke up and he said to his fellow monk, "You know, you're not supposed to be touching women, yet look what you did." And the monk who carried the woman across the river said, "I let her go when I got across the river. You seem to still be carrying her." And it's like that. We need to stop carrying the world. We need to get it off of our shoulders. It's a huge weight. We think we can't live without this weight. Just like we believe in order to swim, we have to take our furniture with us if we're going to leave the island. There are things that we can't carry if we're going to transcend. We have to let go of our burdens in this world. There's an old song, "Your friends won't treat you like they used to when you lay your burdens down." And it's true. You become somebody else and they don't recognize you anymore because we're all defined by our burdens, except we don't call them burdens. We call them wealth, or we call them fame, or we call them titles. We call them other things. We don't see the truth. We have to see the truth. We have to find our way to the truth. We have to find our way to understanding what it is that we truly want. What is it that will bring us peace? And if we set that intention, be cognizant, be fully aware of the fact that the requisite wisdom to enable that intention will arise within you and will take you there. So have no fear that you are not equipped to do what it is you're meant to do. You are equipped to do what you're meant to do. Just set the intention to do it. And until we set that intention, we are going in circles looking for things in places where they can't be found. So in truth, in Hak, in God's reality, the only place that we can find the answers to our dilemmas is with our Lord. So we have to pray, God, take us to that place where we understand your truth. God, take us to that place where we no longer fear giving up our collection of things that we've spent a lifetime gathering around us. Take us to that place where we understand the transcendence into your reality outside of this elemental world. Take us to that place of reality where we see without being blinded by the hypnotisms and the sparkles and the fireworks of this illusory nature that we are living in. Take us to that place of Hak, that place of reality, that place where we are among those who truly believe in you and who are brought close to you and who disappear in you. Take us to that place that is eternal, that is peaceful, where we can find repose. We ask this of you, Allah. We ask this for ourselves and for everyone, Allah. We ask this for the whole world, that they may find your reality and all the difficulties of this world disappear. Ameen. Ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.